My guest here today has a background in traditional finance, has worked in a number of big name crypto companies, but like in typical crypto fashion, would remain to be private and anonymous. He's now a full-time meme coin trader. We're going to discuss meme coins, spot trends, what to target, some of his biggest earnings, some of his biggest losses, and there's loads of gems and nuggets in this episode. But here we go, the thread. Yeah, how would you describe what it is that you do?
Coming up with a sort of job title in a space like this is a task that I guess only makes sense when you're in these kind of situations. But realistically, what I'm doing is very much on the cutting edge and is it's pretty much undefined. But my best attempt would be to say that I'm an on-chain crypto trader, in the sense that most of the time I'm focusing on, this ever-growing, ever-changing opportunity set to take trades within these on-chain environments. And so that means, specifically using decentralized exchanges on layer ones. And so most of those opportunities would be on long-standing blockchains like Ethereum and Solana, but also with a lot of opportunities coming and going on newer arenas or layer ones, as they're called, more recently, such as Hyperliquid or emerging ecosystems like Sui or Say. Those have been, I guess, narratives or storylines, over the last 12 months. And so that's kind of the bulk of what I do and where I'm focused. And that doesn't mean I don't also look at opportunities on centralized exchanges. I'm very much a trader in a general sense. I'm willing to take trades, wherever they may be in crypto. That could also include things like NFTs. But I like to think of myself like as a trader first and foremost, where the biggest opportunities and the most accessible opportunities for me, where I actually have some kind of specific knowledge, is mostly on chain.
So that makes sense to me,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if that would make sense to someone who doesn't understand. Because you mentioned layer ones, you mentioned decentralized exchanges, you mentioned centralized exchanges. Is it fair to say that you basically make money trading on chain? Like that's where the bread and butter. And on chain has a whole bunch of different flavors because it can be different blockchains, it could be different opportunities, but you go for exciting fringe opportunities in new chain. Is that oversimplifying?
I
Does
would
that describe it well?
I
Does that
would
not
say that
touch on
the,
it
the
at all?
key thing here for me, why this is something I see as worth my time, can be boiled down to this, right? Before crypto, before we had the ability to even go on what we have said is called on chain in quotation marks, right? New
Yeah.
assets could not be created just at will very easily. You have equities, these are before crypto, these were probably some of the youngest asset, it's like probably the youngest asset class outside of crypto, or one of
Yeah.
the youngest. So, these are companies, these are organizations, they have employees, they create products. For them to be accessible to the public, they need to have reached some sort of maturity to be listed in one of these kind of trading venues. And so that's a very kind of
Yeah.
slow drip of new tradable assets making their way into equity markets. And obviously outside of that, you
Yeah.
have more long-standing asset classes like real estate or like commodities. Across all of these asset classes, you've had that slow cadence across time where you don't really get a lot of new assets becoming available to trade. And certainly not in a way that's highly liquid as well. Along comes crypto, and specifically crypto in the last 4 years, I would say, since about 2020, where people kind of started actually moving into these on-chain environments, initially Ethereum. We've realized now that you can basically, and this is increasingly true, like in 2024, where you've seen things like Pump Fund, for instance, where you can create at will just thousands of assets just out of thin air. So that's like a fundamentally new ability that people have, right? To be able to create an asset that you can, safely transfer ownership in a way that's secure of these assets, and in a way where you can actually trade, hundreds of
Yeah.
millions, billions of dollars of volume of these assets safely in these venues. So that's a completely new thing, right? And so you have an arena where
Yeah,
new opportunities arise 24/7. You're not kind of limited to this, this opportunity set where there's this slow cadence of new opportunities. And then, below that level,
yeah,
it's like how many of those opportunities are those kind of big narratives with volume behind them and with actual value behind them or momentum even, right? You know,
yeah,
when I say that, I
yeah,
mean big opportunities like buying Facebook stock early or
yeah.
similar kind of opportunities, right? And so that for me kind of really is the key for why this is and will continue to be like an area that I see as interesting when I kind of put on my sort of generalized trading hat, right? It's that there's just this constant flow
Yeah.
of highly liquid opportunities where the barrier to entry to create these opportunities is virtually zero. Aside from the barrier to entry to creating these assets being zero, they can trade 24/7, right? So they can trade 24/7. They're pretty much accessible anywhere for all intents and purposes, right? Again, this is new financial functionality, right, that we've not really seen before when it
Yeah,
comes to legacy asset classes
to
before crypto,
markets in general.
right? Exactly. So we've basically
Yeah.
supercharged the opportunity set for people that have or can develop a trading mindset.
So what you're saying is the breakthrough, the unlock is we've created a way for anyone to launch an asset, anyone to transfer that asset without kind of like the barriers on KYC and accreditation and stuff like that, which means the market is potentially much larger. The volatility is higher because there's more people entering in and out of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Narratives can come and go,
Yeah,
which means there's more opportunities potentially to make money.
yeah,
Shall we say it's not a 7 to 6 market, close at 4 p.m. on a Friday. It's a 24/7 market. So it's basically as long as you can trade, there should be an opportunity to trade in that sense. And so that is kind of like a huge unlock, which has incentivized you to say, okay, I'm going to spend my time doing this because obviously we met on the circuit, and at the time you were working like I suppose a normal in quotation marks crypto job, um, and now
yeah.
you've transferred to doing this full time. We got bills, you got a life, you got
Yeah.
stuff to do. Life isn't cheap. When did it become like, you know what, this could make sense rather than trying to get a paycheck in another role?
The flow state is important, right? And so I try to not be so
Hmm.
regimented in terms of like, planning what my next move is going to be in a macro sense in terms of like, planning my career arc going forward. But also just like when I take on like specific projects, I try to be as close as possible to what I would describe as a flow state in terms of like how I make decisions. And I guess in terms of like what that means for me, I'm very much of the belief that one should do what they're passionate about, which kind of sounds cliche, but in a more specific sense, I think
Yep,
everybody
it does.
has these things. Yeah, so it's definitely a bit cliche, but I would say the way I would kind of describe it in terms of like how I specifically apply it, which I think is maybe different to how other people think about it, is that I think that everybody has certain things which distract them, right? So we have those things that we do that we perceive as, this is my bread and butter. This is where I'm gonna kind of make money. This is what's sensible. This is what's reliable. This is what's accepted as a way to spend my time or a way to make money. And alongside that, there could be things that you don't quite categorize in that way, but they distract you, right? They distract you. And sometimes they can be quite clearly positive things, but sometimes they can even be like things that you or others perceive as negative. So a great example of that for other people has been like gaming. So for a long time, whether it's the millennial generation or before, right? They've looked at something like gaming as sort of a negative distraction, right? Many people might not have been able to identify the value in that, right? Because it's painted with a negative brush. I would recommend kind of to anybody to take a closer look at their distractions as a source to answer the question like what am I passionate about that I could potentially monetize, right? It's not just like what do you love or what do you have fun doing, because I think that kind of colors I think that colors the question in a way that leads to you picking accepted things as an answer to like what I'm passionate about, like be a musician or be a sports person, but what actually distracts you. And so that's kind of something that I had to digest. And I think I realized, since I've gotten into crypto back in 2017 and just wanting to get involved in it in various different ways, the startup scene for me kind of fits that bill of like what's accepted. It's a tried and true path, I think, in any kind of technology space. Either building a startup or joining a startup early is an accepted way to benefit from such a trend. Definitely what might not have seemed like an accepted way to benefit from such a trend is basically just trading meme coins, right? It's completely new. It seems
Yeah.
kind of silly. I don't know, like
The typical judgment of I felt like having been in crypto since 2017 as well, full time since 18. Back then, when you used to tell people you're in crypto, they'll give you the look like, yeah, you're on the spectrum. Like, cool, you work in crypto. It doesn't make like I felt like there was Facebook and those tech and Netflix and those and Google made tech cool, and then crypto in general was the yeah, you're a bit of an oddball. But now,
mm,
2024, crypto is kind of like an acceptable. Bitcoin's validated enough where it's like, oh yeah, you work in crypto. Oh, that's cool. Like that's edgy. But when you say yeah, but I trade meme coins, you get the same reaction that the 2017 like crypto lens was, where it's like, well, can't you be doing something better with your time? And you said that memes are a distraction. What about trading memes is attractive and a distraction to you? Is it just the opportunity to make money? Is it the concept? Like in your brain, what are you processing when it comes to trading memes?
when I reference like crypto trading being a distraction, I think for me it was just that I think definitely making money is kind of a part of it, but also just like being a part of the theater of crypto Twitter, I think was always a big part of it as well. It's something which, over the years I'd kind of been following, various stories, almost like it's a Netflix series over the years. Like many people that have been in the space for a while would remember the Up Only podcast. The typical characters, the
Yeah,
Kobe's, the Ansems,
yeah,
the inverse bras, like we all know the typical characters if we've been in and around this space, right? And I think as much as it was like the trading and the opportunities to make money, like it was also just, you know, being a part of that kind of theater and just being engrossed in that theater and in that storyline and being a part of that sort of fringe online
yeah,
community that had this kind of dirty secret that we had, like just one of the strangest ways to make a lot of money basically that nobody else was cotton in onto. And so that kind of as a concept is something that would continually distract me and something that didn't seem like work. It's not something I had to motivate myself to be involved with. Like it's not something where I was like, okay, I need to
sure.
make more money. I need to find something to do, or I'm looking for a new career path. I need to kind of portion an element of my time to paying attention to this. That wasn't really part of like my mental calculus. It was just something I would be interested in just naturally, just over various parts of my journey.
Yeah,
And so when I did get to that point in my life where I guess part of reaching a certain point was definitely reaching a point of proficiency. And so once I had got to that kind of stage where I had felt quite confident in my proficiency, alongside this idea of giving myself the permission to pursue my distractions. There was a point where I just felt, you know what, it's time to kind of go all in on this.
the stereotypical view of someone who would trade memes is a early 20s male living with their parents up until they make a bunch of money, then lives in a house with 10 of their friends in, I don't know, on the top floor of an apartment in Dubai, in Miami, in one of these places.
Mm.
and that's not your profile.
Yeah.
And so knowing your profile, you have, I suppose, a bit more structured setup. How do you get everyone to buy in to the point that, yo, I'm trading memes, and that's my thing, without saying, yo, you've fallen off the rails.
I've learned that I don't owe people like an explanation, just in general. I think maybe in the past,
Hmm.
I've been quite a transparent person where the path of least resistance is to kind of go into a lot of detail with, like, I guess, people who I would generally call friends, or maybe justify what I'm working on. Yeah, there could be various kind of motivations there, like maybe what I'm working on being a placeholder for anything right at the time. There could be a motivation, I guess, to prove yourself at times, like I've got this new job, or,
Hmm.
whatever it may be.
Yeah. The Christmas dinners, the Christmas, the family link
Yeah,
ups. You wanna look like you've got your stuff together. Your mum wants to parade you to the family,
exactly.
that, yo.
Exactly. So, what one thing I've kind of learned is that you really don't need to talk that much. Like, you really don't need to tell people so much about what you're working on. You've got to be much more like results focused. Making yourself feel in social interactions like what you're doing in life is correct, and kind of getting that social consensus is like no replacement for like real results. There's been times where I felt on top of the world because I've got that nice, cushy explanation of what is currently taking up my time. But when I really looked at the output and the results, it wasn't exactly where I wanted them, or needed them to be. At other times, closer to today, right? I might not have that, that eloquent way of portraying to the world why I've got my shit together. Kind of that personal journey of, caring more about the actual results than what people think. And with that in mind, basically limiting how much you tell
Yep.
people, keeping your business your business.
Yep.
When it comes to, like, those closest to me, where, their opinion, really does matter because I really do need that buy-in. I think it's a long journey. Like, those closest to me, like they know who I am, right? It's not. I would say it's not out of character. I think that's been quite good for me. It's like it's totally not
Sure.
out of character. It's not an overnight pivot in my sort of values. That's something that I've found to be, quite key as well. Ultimately, you have to surround yourself with like-minded people. You've got to choose friends, partners. You've got to be around those family members that are like-minded in terms of wanting to progress themselves, not just being putting themselves in boxes. I think that's a big part of it because, to be honest, it's not being too much of a problem for me. When any problems have reared their head, I think I've had quite a good ability to, reason out why my approach actually makes sense. You know what I mean? And ultimately, if your approach makes sense, it makes sense. How difficult that is for you really depends on your mindset. Any path that you want to go down that leads to the type of success that you want requires you to develop quite a strong mind in terms of knowing what your values are, knowing how to impart that on the people around you, who to choose to be around you, just not being afraid to go against the grain. Not everyone kind of puts it into practice and can be quite, easily swayed by, public opinion and the desire to kind of want that consensus on what they're doing.
How do you trade memes? You wake up on Monday, whatever time. What do you do? Are you on Twitter? Are you on Discord? Are you on Telegram? Are you creating chats? Are you listening to every podcast out? Are you on Dex Screener? Are you using bots? Like, what's tactfully, take me through what it is that you're actually doing when it comes to trading memes.
I'd say the biggest thing for me is that I've curated, you know, I've curated a Twitter timeline like over the past 7 years that
Okay.
pretty much just feeds me most of what's happening in the space. A lot of what I spend my time doing is basically catching up with everything that's going on, kind of in my own mind, measuring the sentiment around various different kind of subsectors in the space, whether that be memes, whether that be subsectors
Mm.
within memes. memes, whether that be kind of like other subsectors in the space, for instance, layer ones or
Yeah.
DeFi tokens, computing that in my own mind, looking at a lot of charts.
What charts in particular?
Yes, so price charts of various different memes. So I spent a lot of the last 12 months trading memes on Solana, for instance, Solana the L1. And so I would
Yeah.
use Bird Eye as a tool to kind of pull up a chart for a specific meme. So how it works
Yeah.
is any token or coin that you want to trade, it will have what's called a contract address, right? And so with that contract address,
Yeah.
you can pull up a price history, a price chart for that meme. I'd use a tool
Sweet.
like Bird Eye to, once I've seen, a meme or several memes that I kind of want to dig deeper into from a price perspective, I'd be able to use Bird Eye to kind of, see how it's traded in the past, how long it's traded. To be honest, I don't really have like a formalized process in terms of like how I
Sure.
analyze a price chart. There are definitely patterns. Prices do not necessarily move in perfectly predictable ways. Like there is no formula that you can use to look at, price history and accurately predict every time what future price is going to be. I've got to a stage where I can identify that there are common patterns that tend to play out in certain ways with some probability distribution that I kind of have internalized, and I'm able to use
Sure.
that information to go into trades in a flexible kind of way where I know this could play out in a way that that would follow that kind of pattern, but it also couldn't. So I kind of have had to develop this
Sure.
this ability to identify patterns, maybe place some kind of probability weighting on, okay, how probable
How likely
is
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 the
this is
output
this is
or
this
the outcome?
exactly going to follow previous times I've seen this pattern? Maybe even
Yeah.
what would be some intermediate kind of steps or outputs that could maybe dynamically change that probability, whether that be stuff I'm seeing in the chart itself, or maybe even by monitoring kind of sentiment and activity on Twitter, or what you might see as like
Yeah.
fundamentally being prepared to enter and exit trades that way. There's been times where I've been able to make money because I've seen a pattern and it's played out like how I've seen it play out many, many times. There's times I've lost money because I was overconfident that it's going to play out in that pattern. There's been times recently where I've gone into trades where I've seen a predictable pattern.
And you got rugged.
Yeah, there's been times where I've been rugged for sure. One thing that I've kind of learned and that I've seen repeated in the space from like really, really good traders, and that's in and outside of crypto, right? Is that portfolio position sizing, sorry, is like one of the most important things to learn, right? Like how you should size a position in
That's the
any
biggest thing.
particular trade. It's one of the biggest things that can really change, your outcomes from bad to worse, or from good to bad, or if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And so, sort of related to that is, when you come off the back of a big win, or at least this is what's happened to me, right? It's adjusting now. How do you now size positions, with this kind of new portfolio
Mm.
size, right? And,
Yeah.
whether you're being,
And how do you do that? How do you what how do you do
well,
that?
it's something I'm
Do
still
you kind of like
learning, to be
read?
honest. It's something I'm still learning, and
Sure.
I would say I'm actually not really sure what the right way is to go about it, if I'm being completely honest, because there's kind of two things pulling me in different directions, right? On the one hand, you don't want to undersell yourself by sizing how you previously did, where you might be actually
Yeah.
undersizing trades now for what is your new portfolio size. But you also just don't want to completely lose your respect for money at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Because what's happened to me, right, is that I guess my thinking is sort of biased in a certain way, kind of like, okay, I'm very conscious of the fact that I don't want to undersize. So I'm like, okay, this is my new portfolio size. This is a lot of money, but you know what? Fuck it. You got to risk money to make money, right? So I
Yeah.
go into those trades and then I lose money, And I'm like, damn, that was a lot of money. Like it hurts. Like I'm like,
Yeah,
that was actually a lot of
when you
money
started to think about
that
it,
I don't have
it
anymore.
like comparing it to
Yeah,
like the real world.
exactly, exactly. So it's like, yeah, both types of thinking are, I think, are valuable in terms of recognizing the real value of money. But also, when you're a trader, you're playing a game where you cannot be so emotionally attached to what the money is and what it can do.
I feel like that's one of the biggest things that people don't really understand about crypto and why crypto gets a bad rap. I feel like there's a part where to be an effective trader, especially in something like crypto, you have to detach emotionally away from money or the outcome of money, good or bad. You kind of have to be kind of like delta neutral. And the issue is that like once you become really good at that, then money in general you detach from. And so there's some things
Yeah,
that the the painting of the banana and it was like 4.6 million and it was like some fake
yeah,
art and he bought it and
yeah,
just
yeah,
ate
yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's a
Just
huge
in the
shock
sun.
factor to eat a banana that you bought for
Yeah,
4.6 million. The rest of the world looks at you like you're crazy, like,
yeah,
oh, these crypto guys have lost the plot. But for him to have been able to get to the position where that is possible, you had to detach from money as a concept anyway. And I think there's good and bad to that generally. It's kind of like the friction point between people who are deep into crypto and kind of like rest of the world.
Well, I don't even think it's necessarily like a crypto specific issue. I think it's just like a money issue in the sense
I
that
suppose
like
it's a finance thing,
I,
right?
yeah, like I think any arena where people can make a lot of
Because I
money,
suppose like bankers and traders get the same kind of stick, right?
money is just this kind of tool. It's just this
Yeah.
construct. It's almost imaginary, right? And you can forget, what money means in the real world, to most people. And so it's kind of
Yeah.
straddling between those two ways of thinking is something that I'm still learning about.
To make this point even more real, I guess on a let's talk in obviously percentage basis, right? Um, what is like the high? I suppose the highest is cliche, but give me a size of a trade percentage return. Let's say in a 24 hours or 1 week time period, that was like the highest that you've made on a trade.
24 hour is easy because I'll never forget that, right? So that was last December. So that's with Dog with Hat. Back in December, I'd seen it at about 10 million market cap. I nibbled a little bit and then it just started going down. It immediately started retracing, and overnight when I woke up in the morning, it was down about 70%.
Damn.
For some crazy reason, I decided to buy more, and I managed to like really size
Okay.
up on this one. I think I'd put in at that stage about half my portfolio,
Damn.
and
Okay, that
then
is high conviction.
yeah. So I'd put in about half my portfolio, sized in. So I'd put in a little bit at the top, sized in like fairly gradually, like between around a 60-80% drawdown, I'd say. The next day, it was up around 700% in a 24-hour period.
Damn.
And
Damn.
I haven't quite been able to
But is that
recreate that
700% from the
feeling.
drawdown or from the initial?
On Bird Eye, where it says like what is the current like 24-hour percentage, the numbers, it was a three-digit number starting with seven.
Sure. Okay.
I've been seeking that feeling ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've been seeking that feeling ever since
That's a
because
heroin hit.
that
That is
euphoria,
taking drugs for the first time.
that was an amazing feeling, to be honest.
That's insane.
I vividly remember getting into the
Yeah.
lift in my building to head to the shops and just looking at myself in the mirror like, damn, I think you made it. Like, I think you might be about to make it. Like damn, like
That was pretty early in this meme cycle, and
yeah,
so I can understand why that yeah, getting that hit so early makes you go, ah, you know what, I'm just in it,
yeah,
and you just spend the rest of the time
yeah, yeah,
just trading up. It makes total sense.
yeah. Like
And
it's
then
from
so was the 70% drawdown your biggest 24-hour loss as well?
I can't think of an example that was necessarily bigger. I mean, 70% is a pretty big drawdown, but it's definitely not the first or
Yeah,
only time I've ever experienced something like that.
sure.
I think that's a big part of like, what I've had to, I could say learn, but I wouldn't even call it learn.
Yeah,
I'd say more just like get used to, become desensitized to,
sure.
like over the years,
Yeah.
to get to the stage that I'm at, and it's probably like one of the most difficult things, like for a newcomer in this space to kind of get used to. is just losing like vast amounts of money in
Yeah,
a very like
it's
quick, like, do you know what I mean?
that's another challenge that comes with crypto. It's kind of like in traditional finance, what 10% a year. This is probably a good return. 20% is like is a really good. 700% in 24 in 48 hours is just crazy. But once you've done that, it's hard to kind of like sensibly stay in the realms of 20%, 20%. And I think that's why the bull market gets so crazy. The more crypto people who've made money, who've been in it for long, they don't really know when enough's enough until it crashes. Until it's like fully crashed and it's like very clear the game is over for
Yeah,
now. Everyone calm down, take a couple of years to regroup.
yeah.
That's the only time when people really understand what's going on. But when the market is bubbling positively, I feel like that's why we just get violent rallies.
For sure, like we see just such exacerbated like market cycles in crypto, right? And I think, part of that is also
Yeah.
how like intertwined these markets are with social media. Part of my answer, which I didn't give as well, about why I'm kind of focused on trading in this space, having come from like more of a startup arena. Just my view on how the world at large is progressing. We are increasingly living in this kind of like degenerate attention based economy.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah. Yeah.
see it like on social media, right? In terms of what people are able to monetize on social media. Like, just the world is getting crazier. Like, I vividly remember like seeing this trend on TikTok, around like NPCs. It's like one of the craziest things I've ever seen, where people are basically streaming on TikTok live and pretending to be NPCs in a game. And viewers are tipping these people to just say random phrases and just do these random kind of like emotes, these random actions, right? And in some cases, making quite a lot of money in a short space of time. I think when the world is moving in a certain direction, you can either like form an opinion about it and say, that's degenerate, that's bad, or you can kind of ride the trend, right? I think a lot of observers, when you think about maybe some of the traditional financial institutions or publications, opinion makers will look at what's happening and have an opinion, right? They'll have an opinion. Your opinion isn't going to stop this train. You know what I mean? Like, this train is not going to get stopped. So you can either get on or you can watch and have an opinion. And so that was also kind of like a big moment for me. And I think it's the same kind of in any
Yeah.
era. You need to ride the trend of your era. You need to be tapped into like what's in the
Yeah.
zeitgeist, whatever that may be. Like, obviously you're gonna have
Yeah.
some kind of like independent moral code you probably shouldn't pass. But aside from that, you've got to play with the cards that you've been dealt.
Yeah.
And so I think like as a generation, these are the cards that we've been dealt.
I hear you.
Within our generation, these are the cards we've been dealt. And we very much live in an attention based economy where it's no longer about working hard at your job for the man to earn currency that's being devalued, purposefully devalued by people that are basically stealing your wealth, right? That's not the world that we live in, right? That's not the way to play within the confines of the game that has been handed to us. If you pay attention to the game that's been handed to us, you'll quickly realize it's not about expending yourself. It's about exploiting like this attention based, depreciating fiat kind of environment, right? And that points towards people being on social media doing crazy. It points towards Jake Paul having a fight with Mike Tyson, and that being one of the
Yeah.
most highest grossing boxing matches of all time, right? So it's the same thing happening everywhere. It's
Yeah.
like you don't get. It's not a high quality, boxing kind of industry right now where that's what gets the eyeballs. That's where the money is. That's where the world's created. The world's created with attention. That's another big part of the crypto story here,
Yeah.
is realizing how intertwined these crypto markets are with social media and with this kind of like attention based world. Just how well the crypto markets allow you to perfectly monetize that.
I,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like I like how
go
you
ahead.
described that actually,
Yeah,
because I was thinking because I think there's that Ray Dalio. I can't remember if it's a saying, but it's in his book where it's like interact with the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And so, if you're interacting
Yes.
with it as it is, you have to understand the current zeitgeist. You have to understand the challenges. You have to understand the
Yeah.
tools of the day today.
Yeah.
Whether or not you like the fact that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson was the highest grossing, highest viewed boxing match in history, and it was crap. Doesn't matter if you like it or if you don't. The way the environment is set up right now is that that just happens to be the fact, and it happens to be the fact that most fiat currencies are depreciating. It happens to be the fact that we've had technological breakthroughs that mean assets can be created and can be rallied, and that's just the fact of where we are today. And so you can either acknowledge that and participate, or you can just be the angry man on the stoop that kind of goes, I don't like how this is played, but whether or not you like or you don't like, that's just the zeitgeist and it's moving regardless of your take. So yeah, no, I really like how you
Yeah.
articulated in that. What are your views on what's next in crypto? Do you care? Are you just focused right now on monetization of memes? Is it are you focused on any particular areas of memes? Like where are you at?
I do care about making money. But I mean, I do also care. There are some things that I care about in crypto, which, I haven't seen, come to fruition and have been even like more emotional trades to me, right? So, for instance, one of the things that I think is missing in the space is privacy,
Sure.
as it stands, right? You know, we're getting more and more usage of blockchains. More people are making transactions, financial transactions on blockchains. And these are mostly on blockchains that are completely transparent. Thankfully, we haven't reached that stage where like, you know, people are making like super like sensitive transactions on chain, like with regards to their actual lives. It's mostly just a bunch of speculation. And it's yet to be seen whether
Hmm.
we'll make that transition to people kind of using these blockchains more in their everyday lives. But if they were, the space is just like not fit for purpose, like from a privacy standpoint. And so that's something that I do care about. It's something I want to play out. As for whether I think it plays out, is something that I'm still grappling with when it comes to like how I make investments, right?
I think it plays out sooner than you think. Like I've managed to see some tech that allows from kind of like permissioned blockchains in a sense. So it's like particular wallets are able to see things
Yeah,
like the block explorer and the transactions, but the naked eye can't. So it's kind of like on one side we can trust that the transactions
yeah,
are being verified because
yeah,
obviously ZK bio
right,
is the
yeah,
ZK stands for zero knowledge,
yeah,
and so there's the zero knowledge technology is actually, I think it's getting close to come to market,
yeah,
and there's some interested parties that will probably start to pick it up, and I
yeah,
think that starts to unlock some
yeah,
of these aspects
yeah,
because I think that's part of the reason like financial institutions haven't come
right,
in a major way
right,
yet. It's because they don't want their whole trading strategy to be on
right,
chain.
right,
They don't want to be followed all over the place, but they want to interact with this public market and all the technology and all the brilliant and that we
yeah,
described earlier. And another piece of that as well is compliance. You want to know that okay, if these transactions are private, that's cool, but I want to make sure there's actually some sort of rules intertwined, and I'm not necessarily interacting with someone that is an explicit actor. So I say that to say that I 100% agree that ZK not necessarily ZK that privacy
yeah,
is a key part of the piece of the puzzle.
yeah,
But I would say slightly different to you that I see that coming soon. I
yeah.
don't think it's just like a hope and a
Yeah,
wish.
I mean, I
I can see
do get what you're saying in
some
terms of
flashes of
like,
it.
I can see yeah, I can see flashes of it as well. Like, and we've had things in production for a while. Like, I mean, Zcash as like one of
Of
the
course.
first
Yeah.
projects to
Yeah.
implement ZK, right?
Hmm.
But like Zcash is a great example for kind of like what I'm kind of alluding to in the sense that Zcash is there. To me, Zcash is probably the greatest asset to come out of this space.
Really?
Yes,
That's a bold statement.
and I tell you why, because I mean the natural answer would be Bitcoin, right? right? Because I mean, it's at close to two
Hmm.
trillion. It's a store of value. It's about to dethrone gold. It's one. So that's that much is clear. Bitcoin is not fungible for that reason that I
Yep.
see that the space has headed in a direction, and this has really opened my eyes up from an investment standpoint, right? That's kind of why I bring it up because you can invest in a way that's aligned with like your perfect vision of how the world works in
Yeah. Yeah.
terms of like, this very beautiful theory that if the tech works, the tech works. And if there's a need, there's a need. But there can be there can be parts of the story that you're not privy to, and that you don't quite fully understand, can disrupt an investment thesis, right? Which is ultimately what I care
Sure.
about, right? As it pertains to privacy, whether we get truly useful innovation on that side, whether that truly useful stuff makes it to market, and in what form, that's something that I'm currently like, spending time thinking about in terms of and how that interplays with, maybe the new administration in comparison to the last administration in the US, I mean. And so
Yep.
like, to your question about, what am I kind of like looking at in the space and paying attention to like going forward, that's something which I'm looking at, right? How this new administration, the various different aspects of how this new administration and what that means and how it can affect, an investment thesis on like multiple fronts in multiple different subsectors of the space. Privacy being one, DeFi being an obvious one right now. We're seeing a big DeFi rally because obviously, Trump himself has a DeFi project, built on
Yep.
Aave, you know, etc.
Crazy,
Right?
right?
So that's obviously catching a bid. But again, privacy could be something that we see. Again, there could be stuff that you might not be privy to or might not be able to understand at the time. Maybe you understand in hindsight in terms of how that can change and alter an investment thesis, around privacy. So that's kind of like how I'm looking at the space going forward. Obviously, still very much interested in memes for the reasons I've said.
Yep.
Namely that I think we're still accelerating in one direction when it comes to social media and attention and the ability to monetize that. The cat's out the bag there. I don't see that. I don't see us quickly returning to a world or moving in the opposite direction where people don't want to monetize like viral nonsense, right? So that's going to continue to be an
Yep.
area of interest. But in terms of like, actual value add, privacy is interesting, DeFi is interesting, and again, particularly as the incoming US administration pertains to that, because I do think that that has been a big lever over the past 4 years in terms of like our ability to actually create
Hmm.
real value in the space. And I think it will hopefully be a positive lever going forward. Hence why the market has rallied so much, since the Trump re-election.
Well, I guess that is good. That is a good chunk of meaningful conversation that
Yeah,
we can give out
cool.
to people in this shape. I guess you're obviously a anomaly, so I don't want to say not you're anonymous in this scenario, so I don't want to say
Yeah,
yeah, what's your social media? Go and follow this, that, and the other. But
yeah.
is there any last comments, last perspectives that you want to share before we wrap up?
I'd probably just say, just don't stay asleep. Like, the opportunities are there, in crypto, and not just in crypto, in other areas as well. I'm kind of copying someone else here, right? Naval specifically. I was actually even listening to one of his podcasts today, right? One of the key kind of memorable things that he said in the past is that the internet will massively broaden the amount of careers that people can pursue. It has done and it will continue to.
Hmm.
And that people kind of massively are under, like, not many people still understand and internalize this fact. I guess if people were to
Yep.
take away one thing to kind of put crypto in that perspective, that, so whether it's crypto or whether it's something else, there's been many other kind of internet trends and there will be many more. I'd say to really kind of internalize that fact and give yourself permission to pursue those paths. Maybe you're already on such a path, because, it's your distraction. I'd say kind of pay attention to that, give yourself permission, and, take advantage of the opportunities.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, I think
yeah,
you've almost convinced me to become a meme coin trader full time, if I'm not already. But
exactly.
yeah, bro. Again,
Yeah,
lovely. Appreciate you jumping on. Great
yeah.
to chat.
Thanks for
As
having me.
always, great to get one of our many conversations just recorded.
Yeah,
Because I feel like that's one of the biggest issues I have is that we have meaningful chats and conversations a lot, but it's
yeah,
just between you and I.
yeah,
And so hopefully this can be useful for someone else in that
yeah,
scenario. But yeah, I guess a wrap
yeah.
up. Do what
Hopefully.
you guys do: like, comment, subscribe, the thread at Fred the Pod on all platforms. And yeah, man, appreciate you jumping on.
Cool, man. Thanks.
Hope there's some things that you learned from there. The mindset for trading, the psychology of meme coins. But like in every other podcast, like, comment, subscribe. The Fred.